Hey guys, Popcorn Recaps here. In today's video, I will be telling you the story of the horror film As Above, So Below. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy the video. This film surrounds Scarlett, a passionate archaeologist who discovers that a historic relic lies in the catacombs beneath the streets of Paris and enlists the help of some explorers to help her find it. However, this journey proves to be filled with many supernatural occurrences, leaving the explorers to wonder if they will make it out alive. The movie begins with Scarlett recording herself on a bus, saying that she has crossed the Iranian border and is currently traveling to a region where the destruction of a network of caves will occur. Scarlett is determined to examine these caves as she believes they contain a missing piece of history, although she is aware that the punishment for trespassing is death. Later that night, Scarlett meets her friend Reza, who shows her the way to the caves by moving a table in his home, which reveals a hole in the wall. Using a flashlight, Scarlett and Reza venture through the caves, trying not to be caught as soldiers walk in front of them. Reza insists that they must leave as they are running out of time, but Scarlett refuses, stating they have not started demolishing the caves as it is not yet sundown. The two friends run through the caves, arriving at a message on a stone wall, which is more beautiful than Scarlett could have imagined. Scarlett begins hammering into the wall as her friend begs her to stop as the stone collapses, revealing a passageway which Scarlett enters. Inside, she is happy to discover a large animal-like statue with horns, which is called the Rose Key, stating that she must scan the writings on the statue. Reza starts to panic, saying that they must leave, but Scarlett doesn't budge, shouting that her father spent his entire life trying to find this statue. Scarlett tries to find the writings on the statue, as a countdown is heard in the background. Scarlett runs out the passageway, seeing a man hanging in front of her. She continues running, barely escaping with her life as the cave is demolished. Scarlett shouts for Reza and finds him, both of them returning to Reza's home, out of breath and high on adrenaline. Reza insists that she needs to be more careful, saying that her father's quest was a path to madness. However, Scarlett stands her ground, saying that her father wasn't crazy. Convinced that the pursuit of this quest is dangerous, Reza says everyone who hunts for Flamel's stone is crazy. They all wind up dead. In the next scene, we see Scarlett being recorded by someone as she states that she is a professor at University College in London and is a passionate archaeologist. We see that Scarlett is in Paris as the man behind the camera asks Scarlett what her father taught her about the Philosopher's Stone. Scarlett replies that this stone is an elusive substance that has the potential to turn base metals into gold and can provide the key to eternal life. Scarlett shows a drawing depicting the history of the stone, stating the creation of the stone was the goal of alchemy, which was an early form of science. The man behind the camera asks if there is any truth to the rumors about Scarlett's father being mentally unstable. Scarlett's expression quickly changes as she says that many people have arrived at this conclusion because her father committed suicide. The cameraman and Scarlett walk through the streets of Paris, as Scarlett shows where the greatest of the alchemists, Nicholas Flamel, once lived. Scarlett further continues on this history tour by saying that grave robbers tried to dig up the stone from Flamel's grave, but they found his casket empty. Next, they go to a museum, finding Nicholas Flamel's handmade tombstone, and Scarlett states that her father believed that the clue to finding the Philosopher's Stone is hidden on this tombstone in arcane symbols. Scarlett says that the meaning behind these arcane symbols has remained a mystery until she discovered the Rose Key, which we saw at the beginning of the movie. The Rose Key can translate the symbols on Flamel's tombstone into Aramaic, which unfortunately Scarlett doesn't speak. However, luckily for them, Scarlett knows someone who does. In the next scene, Scarlett picks a lock to the church, going up to the highest part where she claims to know someone who often breaks in and fixes things. Scarlett finds George, with whom she was romantically involved in the past. Scarlett doesn't even get a chance to say a few words before George states that he wants nothing to do with whatever Scarlett has gotten herself into. We learn that the man behind the camera is Benji, who is making a documentary about Scarlett's search for the stone. George seems to be full of resentment, telling Benji to stay away from Scarlett. Scarlett begs George for a favor, but George reminds her of the last time they were together, which ended with him in a Turkish prison. It seems that Scarlett is determined to pursue her archaeological goals, no matter the cost or how it impacts other people's lives. George appears not to be interested until Scarlett says that she found the Rose Key in Iran, stating that she needs Georgie's help to translate the Aramaic on Flamel's tombstone. Scarlett could not be happier when George agrees to help with the translation, but he insists that this is all he will do for her. The trio goes back to the museum where George translates Flamel's tombstone, leading Scarlett to believe that the answer lies on the back of the tombstone. Removing the tombstone, she examines the back, seeing nothing until she mixes some cleaning products and rubs the mixture on the back of the tombstone. Scarlett is so determined to uncover this mystery that she goes to the extreme by removing historic artifacts. Scarlett asks for a match and lights the chemicals on fire, which reveals some hidden words. George continues to translate these new words and discovers that it roughly translates to the gates of hell. Scarlett looks at her father's books and puts together the missing pieces, discovering that 370.5 feet beneath Flame's tombstone is where they will find the stone. Scarlett says that they will use the catacombs to get there. Looking at two large maps, George and Scarlett discover that the catacombs don't go under Flame's grave. However, Scarlett points out that there is a hidden chamber within the catacombs, as George mysteriously says that he doesn't go underground, to which Scarlett apologizes for suggesting this. We then see Benji and Scarlett go on a tour of the catacombs, many skulls lining the walls as they are told that this is the largest crypt in the world. Scarlett notices that they need to find a way into the off-limits area of the catacombs to start their search for the stone. A boy sitting on a stone tells them to go to a club and asks for Papillon, who will guide them to this off-limits area. However, looking back through his camera, Benji sees that the boy has now vanished. Later that night, George, Scarlett, and Benji go to a club looking for Papillon. Benji sees a pale woman in a white dress exiting the club, recording her as she stares at him before walking away. They find Papillon, who, although seems hesitant to accompany them to the catacombs, agrees when Scarlett says the secret chamber is filled with treasure. Papillon then makes a deal for him and his friends to take half of the treasure, which Scarlett has no problem with, as it's not the treasure she's after. The following day, George insists that he's not going to the catacombs, although Scarlett begs him to come with the group. Papillon introduces Scarlett, Benji, and George to Zed, their climber, and his girlfriend Saxi. Benji continues to record as the group discusses the plan, Benji zooming in on the scar on Papillon's hand, which he later asks Zed about. However, Zed replies that he doesn't want to talk about this. Benji asks Saxi about the dangers of the catacombs, and she tells him that if they run out of batteries, without flashlights and water, they will die. There are also other dangers such as claustrophobia, the police, drowning, and rats. Papillon tells them that they need to be quick when they leave the van, as if the police catch them, it will not end well. George insists that he will walk the group to the entrance of the catacombs and then he will leave. Now in front of the entrance, the group puts on their headlamps and walks into an enclosed space as Papillon shows them a very small hole that will lead them into the catacombs. Benji ensures all the cameras installed on everyone's headlamps are working as Scarlett continues to pressure George into accompanying them, but he is adamant that he will stay behind. Unfortunately, George is forced through the small entrance when a police officer suddenly appears, attacking Papillon. The group all go through the small hole as Benji gives George a headlamp. Benji learns that Georgie's fear of caves stems from the traumatic death of his brother, who drowned in a cave as a child. Scarlett apologizes for leaving George in the Turkish prison, insisting that she is glad that George is here. However, George looks panicked and upset as he never wanted to go into the catacombs, as he had only agreed to be Scarlett's translator. Papillon greets the group, having escaped from the police. The group walks through the caves, seeing that Papillon has tagged his nickname, Pap, on a wall. Going through muddy water, the caves begin to grow more claustrophobic as they continue to trek through grimy water, which gets deeper the further they walk. Coming to the end of the water-filled passageway, they see a group of women eerily singing with candles all around them. One of the women stares directly into Benji's camera, which seems to be the same pale lady Benji saw at the club the night before. A tense atmosphere develops among the group as Papillon states that they must crawl through a passage filled with bones, but Scarlett disagrees, stating that a corridor blocked with rocks is the right way. However, Papillon insists that this corridor is a bad place, as people who venture into there never return. Papillon is adamant that they shouldn't go through the corridor, telling them the story of his friend, who he calls the mole, who went inside this corridor but was never seen again. Everyone ends up crawling through the narrow passage filled with bones as Papillon tells them to be careful and follow Zed. However, Benji struggles to get through and starts panicking, claiming that he is stuck. Scarlett encourages Benji to move, and he gets the bones out of the way, moving forward. However, the narrow corridor collapses, but luckily the group makes it to the other side. Now on the other side, Scarlett is convinced that they're going in a circle, seeing the same blocked corridor from before. Irritated and scared, Benji punches Papillon, but Papillon is sure that he knows where they are going. However, Papillon seems confused and lost as they kick in the stones in front of the corridor and go through, coming back the same way they came, seeing Papillon's name tagged on the wall as they did before. Papillon insists that he has never been in this area as the group hears a phone ringing in the distance. Papillon informs them that in the past, the phone company ran their lines through the catacombs. This leads George to notice an area where millions of people fell to their death due to a building's collapse. Papillon states that when they sent people to fix it, 50 of them were never seen again. The group comes across an abandoned piano, George saying that this piano is identical to one he would play with his brother as a child. However, they could never complete the only song they knew because one key didn't work. Reminiscent of his childhood, he plays the song and sees that the very same key doesn't work as Papillon tells them that they shouldn't be here. Once again, they hear the sound of a phone ringing as Scarlet runs away from the group, desperate to find the ringing phone. The group quickly follows Scarlet, where she finally finds the phone still ringing covered in dust. Scarlet answers the phone, a muffled voice on the other end asking, "Why won't you talk to me, Scarlet?" as she wonders who this could be. Terrified, she hangs up the phone as they all turn around startled to find the mole, Papillon, and Sauxy's friend who has been missing for quite some time. The mole insists that none of them should be here, clearly disappointed that his friends never came to look for him. The mole tells them to follow him, claiming that he knows the way out. Cracks appear in the ceiling above them as they run behind the mole, who insists that the only way out is down. The ground arrives at an abandoned well, which is very deep, as Scarlet states that they will find the hidden chamber through the well, insisting that this will help them find a way out. One by one, the group descends into the well using a harness when Benji screams from above, crashing into George. Although Benji's safety arrives at the bottom of the well, Scarlet dresses the wounds on Benji's hand. The group continues to walk when George suddenly slips into a pool of water. Their voices appear muffled until a loud noise causes them to run, all of them confused and terrified, even seeing a small child in the darkness. To their relief, the group finds a door, but it is a dead end as Papillon shouts angrily in French. George notices a winged vulture on a wall, telling Scarlet, who decodes a riddle, stating that they have to take the right stone from the right space, or the ceiling will collapse and kill them. Under immense pressure, George and Scarlet work together to find the right stone, and slowly pull it as the wall collapses and a stone rolls away, revealing a tunnel. Scarlet is the first to go through the tunnel as George follows behind her, seeing a dead priest whose corpse has not started to decompose. The two of them come across the word vitriol, which is another riddle that will lead them to find flameless stone. To the group's dismay, Scarlet insists that they must go deeper and tells everyone to turn off their headlamps, and upon doing so, light emits from a passageway. Scarlet ventures into the water below, touching a loose stone, which George helps her to dislodge. Scarlet swims beneath the water and discovers the hidden chamber, seeing a bunch of gold and treasure as George follows behind her. The rest of the group is soon inside the hidden chamber, and they are now overjoyed upon finding the treasure. Scarlet is then pleased to find the Philosopher's Stone in a wall decorated with drawings. Behind her, the group removes the gate which holds the treasure as Scarlet shouts, certain that this is a trap. Scarlet is right as we see the ceiling collapse, but luckily no one is killed as they all cough, covered in rubble. They find Sauxy stuck between some rocks as they pull her out, seeing that her arm is bleeding. They start to dig for the mole, but decide to leave him behind as they cannot afford to move the rocks. The group starts to become worried as they have lost their food and water in the rubble, Papillon stating that they should start conserving the energy in their headlamps. Scarlet attends to Sauxy's bleeding arm, using flameless stone which miraculously heals her wound, which the group is amazed by. The group continues to look for a way out, finding a door on the ceiling, Scarlet stating that this works in conjunction with another door which symbolizes as above so below, which seems to be yet another riddle. The group then finds a door through the floor and uses the harness once again to go down as Scarlet tells the group that there is a passage down there. The group all follow Scarlet as George notices a sign and translates it. The sign reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here," which Scarlet says is the inscription over the gates of hell, as a terrified Papillon insists that he is not going through this space. As usual, Scarlet is the first to crawl through the space, realizing that this is similar to where they found the stone, but Scarlet notices that everything is upside down. Behind them, they are shocked to discover that the entrance is now gone. Papillon wonders if they are dead as nothing makes sense. Scarlet goes back into the water, insisting that they must keep moving. Muffled screaming sounds are heard as the group gets out of the water, noticing the priest's body they saw before is now decaying. They are shocked to find the mole, breathing deeply in the shadows, completely unresponsive. Sauxy approaches the mole trying to help him, but unfortunately, the mole violently attacks her, smashing Sauxy's head on a rock, which immediately kills her. The mole disappears and Scarlet tries to revive Sauxy with flameless stone, but it doesn't work as Papillon stands there completely distraught. Despite this unexpected death, the group keeps moving, crawling through a dark tunnel as Scarlet sees a noose that oddly disappears when she looks a second time. Once again, they come to the abandoned well, and the remaining members of the group use the harness to safely transport themselves to the bottom. An eerie voice whispers Scarlet, leading the group to call for Benji, ensuring that he's safe. Benji is about to lower himself, but stops upon hearing the sound of a baby crying when suddenly, a woman with a child jumps right in front of him. Benji then falls to his death as Scarlet cries, shocked and saddened by Benji's sudden death. Papillon and George insist that they keep moving as they once again crawl over the bones, when George suddenly sees a vision of his brother Danny drowning beneath him. George desperately tries to move the bones, but Scarlet convinces him that what he's seeing isn't real. George wonders what is happening to them as they hear a scream in the distance, which seems to go on and on. Walking further, Papillon sees a burning car, a man sitting in the flames blankly staring at Papillon. Clearing distressed and full of guilt, Papillon shouts, "It wasn't my fault." This explains the scar on Papillon's hand, which we saw earlier. Papillon is suddenly dragged towards the burning car as Scarlet, George, and Zed try to help him, but they fail as he is pulled into the ground as the car disappears, leaving his legs sticking in the air. Zed is terrified upon witnessing his friend's death, but Scarlet and George insist that they must keep moving. They continue to walk down a passageway, seeing a person in a long black coat, which terrifies them as they run in the opposite direction. George tells Scarlet that despite whatever happens, he wants her to know that the week they spent in Turkey was the best week of his life, to which Scarlet agrees. They continue to move and come across the same person in the black coat, now sitting in a chair, which they slowly and carefully walk behind as muffled. Eerie voices are heard all around them. Suddenly, screaming faces protrude from the walls as they see the person in the black coat stand up and give them a deadly stare. The group runs, but the screaming faces emerge from the wall, biting George in his neck as he is dragged away by Zed and Scarlet. Blood emerges from George's mouth, and Scarlet tries to use the stone to heal him, but this doesn't work. George manages to mutter the word vitriol, which is a part of the riddle that we heard earlier. To her disappointment, Scarlet discovers that this isn't the real stone, and only by returning it will she find the real one. Scarlet states that she must go back and run away, leaving Zed holding a cloth to George's neck. Going back the way she came, a bloody hand pulls her into a pool of blood, but she escapes, seeing what she thought was her dad hanging in front of her, but it is only a screaming version of herself. Scarlet arrives at the hidden chamber, returning the stone, and finds the real stone, a reflective golden mirror on which she rubs her hand. Meanwhile, Zed drags George further into the cave as the figure in the black coat comes closer towards them. As she runs away, Scarlet discovers her father hanging in front of her and apologizes to him with tears in her eyes. Scarlet finally returns to George and kisses him, now possessing magical powers since she touched the stone. George is brought back to life, and the trio runs, encountering several dead ends before coming to another abandoned well. Scarlet insists that they must jump into the well, stating that they will survive if they rectify themselves and their mistakes, which the catacombs have been exposing all along. Scarlet explains that they must confront what torments them, such as George being unable to save his brother, as Zed admits that he has never seen his child, although he is aware that the child is his. Now admitting their faults, the trio jumps into the well, screaming as they plummet into darkness. Crashing at the bottom, Zed begins to panic, thinking that they are trapped. However, George discovers a manhole in the floor as Scarlet and George use their hands to push it down. They are relieved when they can remove the manhole and are finally free, seeing the outside world. The trio steps out of the manhole and hugs each other, finally free of this nightmare. Still shaken up, Zed walks away as George and Scarlet embrace once again. The movie ends with Scarlet looking into the camera, stating that she was never looking for financial gain, as she only wanted to discover the truth, which would be of great historical value. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps like this. Good night.